This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Thank you for tuning into the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. We talk the latest and greatest news in the world of sports. As always, I'm Alex. Today's my solo day, of course. Ben will be back tomorrow, as well as Anthony, in which we will go in deep on what the college football playoff rankings week 3 is looking like. I'm going to do a little bit of my best, my best pretending here and trying to guess what I think they'll be. I stand by the fact that the last 2 weeks I have been dead set right on it. I'm going for 3 for 3. Hopefully I can nail it. Today we're going to do that, of course. That's going to be after the first break. We're going to start with the Monday Night Football game between the Cincinnati Bengals and the New York Giants. And then to end the show, I'm going to do a little bit of news. There was some baseball awards, announced last night, Rookie of the Years. So I'll cover some news through the world of sports to end the show. But first, we're going to start with the Monday Night Football game between the New York Giants and the Cincinnati Bengals, a game in which the New York Giants won 21-20. Over the visiting Bengals. They moved to 6-3 on the year, and they are 4-1 at home. The Bengals, on the other hand, dropped to 3-5-1. They have only one win on the road, struggling there. For the Bengals, in a year that the AFC North is a struggling division, even though they have good teams. I would say this is one of those divisions that, when it comes down to the time of year, you start looking at playoff opponents and matchups. They'd be any one of those teams would be, excluding the Browns, of course. Any one of the top 3 teams, the Bengals, the Steelers, and the Ravens, would be a team you wouldn't necessarily want to face in the postseason. So Andy Dalton was a leading passer in the night where he was sacked 3 times for 18 yards. Very significant sacks as well, one late. He did have a decent day, 204 yards on 16 completions, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, the interception late by Landon Collins there in the fourth quarter. Not a great rushing day for anybody, really. 46 yards from Jeremy Hill. He did add a touchdown there early in the game. Giovanni Bernard, 17 yards, and Andy Dalton had a rush for 15. Tyler Eifert was a leading receiver on 3 receptions for 96 yards. His long was a 71-yard touchdown, or excuse me, a 71-yard reception, which is a very interesting formation also. You had the center, and you had 2 guards next to him, and then wide left to the quarterback, you had the 2 tackles that were lined up as if there was a screen because there was a receiver behind them. So there's 2 tackles out there and a receiver behind them, almost like a quick screen. You run back to where Dalton is. You have the guard and center and the guard. And you have Dalton and I think a running back. And then you have a tight end with Eifert. It was kind of where the tight end would be normally in a 5-man line with the tight end to the right of one of the tackles. But he was standing, and then you had a receiver wide to the right. And it was very confusing. I've never seen anything like it, and they got a long play for it. So, I mean, it's very clever of them for constructing something like that. Very cool looking, as a matter of fact, as well. So, Eifert was a leading receiver on the night. A.J. Green had a touchdown on 68 receiving yards on 7 receptions. Not a bad day for him. Everybody from there drops off to 19, 12, and 9 yards, respectively. We look at the Giants. Eli Manning, 2 bad picks, but he did throw for 240 yards on 28 completions. The leading rusher for the night was Rashad Jennings, 87. Finally got the rushing game moving a bit, 122 as a team. Eli even got it on the fun, 3 for 4. It's not a bad average, Eli. Leading receiver for the night for a team that they definitely got more receivers involved in this game to the Bengals 5. They alone had 8. Odell Beckham Jr. was a leading receiver, 10 receptions on 11 targets, almost perfect on the night with him and Eli. 97 yards and a score there for him. Tight end Will Tye added some much-needed third-down conversion catches there, 5 for 53 for him as well. Sterling Shepard had a touchdown, 5 for 42, and Jarrell Adams had a touchdown on one of his 3 for 18. Now, the big thing here was the pass rush. Yes, he didn't get sacked much, but Dalton was he was in danger a lot. I mean, he was sacked 3 times as opposed to the one that Eli got, but he was rushed a lot, which it's not something you want from an offense that weirdly hasn't really been as good lately, I suppose. At least has in the last few years. I mean, he had 6 quarterback hits on Dalton last night. You have the sacks, obviously. You have the Landon Collins interception that was, I don't know if it was better play by him or just a worse play by Dalton. He kind of floated it into the middle of the field there. But if you look at it, I mean, I would say probably more on Dalton. But he was rushed all night. It's not something you want from him. They had 9 penalties for 60 yards, the Bengals did, as opposed to the Giants 2 for 15. So that's definitely a big plus for them. The possession wasn't hugely different, 28-31. In favor of yards, though, the Giants 351 to 264 because of that big output from their rushing game. So that was a plus for them for sure. I just think that there's something going on with the Bengals this year where they're not closing games out. They're not finding ways to win as they did last year. And it's really weird to me because of all the good teams last year that aren't doing as well this year, whether you look at Carolina, the Cardinals, Seahawks had their fumbles. They're starting to really pick it back up. Teams along those lines, the Steelers. The Bengals were one of the teams that had really the least amount of turnover, excluding Hugh Jackson leaving. So it's interesting to me that they would have this drop-off because I don't quite understand the reason why. They only had 12 first downs on the night. They had 2 for 11 efficiency on third down. I don't understand what's going on with this team. I really don't. You look at their schedule as it stands right now. So they just got done playing the Giants, obviously. They have the Bills this upcoming weekend. The battle of New York there. And then they have the Ravens and the Eagles within the division. That gets you to the start of December, and that's on the 4th. So the Bills, the Ravens, and the Eagles, those are 3 games that they could still lose. The Bills have been playing well. They've been playing in games. They've shown that they can play with most everybody. They played well against the Patriots a few weeks ago. They've shown that their offense can produce. They played really well against the Seahawks. So that's a game that they could absolutely lose. You look at the Ravens, and that's a division rival matchup. Excuse me, I said the Eagles a second ago. I was thinking of the Giants. The Ravens, that's a division matchup, and they are currently in first place of a weak division. Yes, but they are in first place. And division games are always tough. The Steelers play the Browns this week, and the Browns are winless, sure, but that doesn't mean the Steelers should take them any more lightly than they would because they are winless. That's a division game. They need to take them seriously, just like the Ravens and the Bengals. Just because they're playing a little down, they are the leader in your division, and you don't want to be helping them to do so. So that's going to be a tough game as well, and the Ravens have shown that they can maybe put a little more together lately. And then the Eagles look like the best team in this division to start the year in the division of the Giants to start the year until the Cowboys really just continued to pull away with it. The Eagles looked great. They have fumbled, as you say in football terminology, they have fumbled away some really good starts for the team to kind of fall to a mediocre record as it stands right now. But they have shown that they can do a whole lot, and they are definitely a team to look at heading into the future. And then you look at the Giants. Giants coming off this win, as I said, after losing 3 straight, starting with the Redskins and the Vikings and the Packers. They have won 4 straight as it stands, and they go on to play the Bears this Sunday, then the Browns, and then the Steelers to start December, as I mentioned, on the 4th, as well as we mentioned the Eagles facing the Bengals. So those are 3 tough opponents. I think they'll beat the Bears. I think they can beat the Browns. The Steelers will be a nice test for them because they're on and off. So we'll have to see if they are on that day. They played very well against the best team in the division, being the Cowboys, who they faced the following week after the Steelers on the 11th of December. So it's going to be a tough stretch for them. The Cowboys obviously have a stranglehold on the division, and they're going to have to go through them at any point this year, especially on Sunday night on the 11th, if they think they're going to make the playoffs from winning this division. If not, they're going to have to look at a wild card spot. But as it stands, that is the life and where we're sitting for both of these teams. One team on a nice hot streak with the Giants, and one team just looking for answers with Cincinnati. So we're going to take our first break. We're going to come back. I'm going to try my best to talk some college football here in relation to the rankings today and really see if I can even get close to what it's going to be like. And I'm just going to kind of spitball here, throw some stuff against the wall, see if it sticks. But we'll take our first break and come back, and we'll do that in here in just a minute at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
And we are back here at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, and we're going to talk some college football. So the third week of the college football playoff rankings comes out today, 7 Eastern time, 4 Pacific over here in California, of course, for me. So really what we're looking at as it stands right now is the only for certain, is Alabama at 1. Alabama obviously is still undefeated. As that stands, they've been at the number 1 of all the polls that have been out since the preseason, since the end of last year, because they are the reigning champion. So, as it stands, Alabama's number 1. Now, as it stood last week, we look at last week in terms of the top 4 in the college football playoff rankings. It was Alabama, Clemson, Michigan, Washington. All teams were undefeated as it stood. You had Ohio State and Louisville the first out. Now, 2, 3, and 4, as we have talked about and as we all know, lost this weekend. So that's really the interesting thing. It's going to be Alabama number 1, and then, you throw your hands in the air. I don't know. Ohio State would be the likely one to move into 2 there, in my opinion. They would be the most likely to move to 2. They're 9-1. Their only loss coming to Penn State, who is now at number 9 on the AP poll. So that strength of loss isn't bad, as opposed to when, Louisville's lost to Clemson. In that sense, strength of loss is very good as well. But Penn State sitting at 9, that makes that loss a little better. Then would you put a Louisville in 3? Louisville, like I said, their one loss to Clemson by regards of a yard. Then you're looking at, okay, is Louisville at number 3, but what makes them better than Clemson? Well, their loss to Clemson, as opposed to Clemson's loss this weekend in terms of a strength of a loss. You look at, oh yeah, we lost to Clemson. Okay, that's not horrible. Clemson was the number 2 team most of the year. You look at Clemson, oh, we lost to Pitt. Well, Pitt's an unranked team. That makes that strength of their loss worse. And then you look at Michigan. Michigan lost to a team that played very well. I mean, not a consistently good team. But Iowa did beat them 14-13, and that, I would say if you gave them 10 times to play, I don't know how many times Iowa would win that game. But you look at, can you put Michigan in the top 4? So as it stands right now, I would say Alabama, Ohio State, 1-2. You got to look at it that way. I think the interesting thing is why it's going to be hard to predict is because what are they going to weigh on in terms of strength of these teams? So it can be loss because Louisville would be 3 then. Or would it be, strength of their overall wins? Michigan has faced not as strong of opponents as Louisville. Excuse me. So I think if I had to make a guess, I would say Alabama, Ohio State, Louisville, Michigan. I find it hard to put Clemson in the top 4 right now over Michigan, and I think they're going to throw Louisville in there instead. I think Washington doesn't sniff the top 4. Washington's nowhere near it. I think they dropped to 7 in the AP poll this week. I'm surprised they didn't drop more to like 8 or 9. It's going to be tough. It really, SC is ranked 15th, so I think that is something that helped UW there dropping only to 7. But I think their hope of a champion playoff run is done, unless they win out and somehow 2, 3, 4 lose again. And then we're looking at Clemson, and who knows. But as it stands, I would say Alabama for sure. Obviously Alabama. They've been in the polls for weeks now. Ohio State, and then, man, I find it hard to really guess these 3-4s right now. I would say Louisville, Michigan, as of right now. I'm putting a lot on the line here. I'm trying to keep my perfect record intact here. Week 1 and week 2 of these, I've got them dead on. Obviously week 1 is pretty easy, but I got to keep this up. I got to try to get this one. To keep a perfect record. So I would say absolutely Alabama, absolutely Ohio State in 1-2. You could definitely see a lot of variance in this, whether you go Michigan only dropping to actually staying at 3, I suppose. Or not dropping to 3, maybe dropping 1 spot. And then Louisville at 4. You could see Alabama, Ohio State, Louisville, Clemson maybe at 4, based off of their strength of loss. I don't know how many ways you can really go about it. I would say Wisconsin's not going to be in. They currently sit at 6 in the AP poll. They're the second man out in the sense of 5-6, but they have a lot of ground to cover if they think they're going to get into the playoffs. And then we have, obviously, Washington at 7. They're not making it. Oklahoma has a lot of work to do. And Penn State, that's nice way to end your season, but sitting at 9 with this much time left, not much, I would say is a good push, but probably as far as you're going to get it, I'd say is unless some of these other teams lose, maybe up to 7. So I think as it stands, yes, Bama, Ohio State. I got to go Louisville, Michigan. It makes the most sense to me. It makes the most sense in terms of things I know I can consider, as opposed to something that the committee might look at, something that I'm not as keen to put into consideration for me at least. And that's just, that's how it stands. I'm going to talk to Jeremiah about it on the football show here in a little while, see what he thinks, see if he thinks it doesn't look any different than that. He was right the first week, but he was wrong last week. Flip-flopped the 3-4, or at least maybe that was week 1 because Michigan jumped to 2 over Clemson. I got that one right. But I'm talking, I'll bounce ideas off him. I could very well change my opinion on what this looks like to me, but I would say right now, as it stands, Bama, Ohio State, Louisville, Michigan. I'd say your first 2 out are Clemson. And Washington, I think, drops all the way out. So I'd say Clemson, Wisconsin. So actually, that's pretty much how the AP Top 25 looks as it stands right now. So I guess I would say, that if you want a reference, you can look at the AP Top 25. I guess as I look at that now, that is what it looks like. I don't see Wisconsin being pushed past by Washington. I think Washington, with that loss, lost to USC. Yes, they are 15, but otherwise, they didn't beat a huge amount of strong competitions, excluding Utah. So, Bama, Ohio State, Louisville, Michigan, first 2 out, Clemson, Wisconsin. And of course, we're back tomorrow to see if that's right. See if I got that right. But in the meantime, I'm going to take my last break. We're going to come back. We're going to talk a little bit of news in regards to baseball, maybe a little football, maybe a little basketball. You'll have to be surprised. So I'll take a quick break and be right back here at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast.
Do you want to be healthier, yet you just don't know what to do? All these shows telling you this and that, but nothing seems to work. Well, listen close. Golden State Media Concepts has got something great for you. The Health and Wellness Podcast, dedicated to workout trends, healthy eating habits, diet, and everything about healthy living. Join us in our banters as we help you not just live life to the fullest, but live it to the healthiest.
And we're back here at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, and we're going to end the episode with some news in the world of sports. Let's start in the NFL, and specifically the NFC North. And the Chicago Bears, their star receiver Alshon Jeffrey has been suspended without pay for the next 4 games for violating the NFL policy on performance-enhancing drugs. He said in a statement on Monday that he took a recommended supplement to battle inflammation, and they contain an ingredient on the league's banned substance list. He was quoted as saying, "I take full responsibility, and I'm deeply upset with myself for not doing the proper research on this supplement. I want to apologize to my family, the Bears organization, my teammates, and Bears fans. I will work hard to earn back the respect and trust of Bears Nation and look forward to being back on the field." So he's eligible to return to the active roster following their game against the Lions on the 11th of December. And meanwhile, just to cover all the bases here, Kyle Long was hurt in the game this weekend. He is out indefinitely. He had a right ankle injury. Let's cover that real quick. But Jeffrey, he's playing under the franchise tag. You know, he's going to be a free agent next year. He leads the team with 630 receiving yards. But he's not having a great year. He's definitely having a down year in a year that you want to do your best in terms of a contract year. I don't think that's going to be an issue with him getting a team to sign him. I think he'll be just fine in that category, but it is something to keep an eye on in that sense. Let's move from the NFL to the MLB, and we'll look at the rookies of the year that were announced yesterday for the NL and AL respectively. In the NL, the Los Angeles Dodgers shortstop Corey Seager was named the unanimous winner of the award yesterday over his teammate Kenta Maeda and Trey Turner of the Washington Nationals. Seager was drafted back in 2012 in the first round, and since then he has been pretty good. He's 22 years old. He batted .308 with 26 home runs and 72 RBIs this year, and he scored 105 runs for the Dodgers. He hit 193 times and is second most in the National League, while his 6.1 WAR average was the 4th best in the NL. There's a reason this guy was the unanimous winner, you guys. He received the maximum 150 points, finished well ahead of Trey Turner, who was in second place with 42, and then Maeda 37. He was an all-star. He was the 17th rookie of that team of the Dodgers history franchise to win the award. First since 96 with Todd Hollandsworth. But, there's a reason this guy obviously won. He finished the season ranked among the NL leaders in hits. He was second. Runs, he was 5th. Doubles, he was 7th. Multi-hit games, he was tied for second. Extra base hits, he was 7th. Total bases, he was 4th. Batting average, 7th. And slugging percentage, he was 10th. That's pretty good if you ask me, And I'm a Giants fan, believe me. I'm well aware of Corey Seager and how good he is. So, definitely a really good young player they have there, and it's going to be interesting to see how he grows and progresses because he had a very good year. He had MVP consideration. I don't think he will get that, but there's a reason he got Rookie of the Year. And now we look at the AL, and we go to the Tigers, and their pitcher, Michael Fulmer, was named the American League Rookie of the Year, beating the finalists Gary Sanchez of the Yankees and Tyler Naquin of the Indians. Fulmer, 23 years old, right-hander for the team. He was 11-7 this year with a .306 ERA and 26 starts for the Tigers. He said, I'm quoted as saying, "I'm really happy and blessed to receive this award. I knew that both Gary and Tyler had outstanding years, and I hope to play against them for a long time." So over 14 stretches that spanned from May to mid-August, he pitched 93 and 2/3 innings, recorded a 1.44 ERA in that stretch. He started to the run by becoming the second pitcher in Major League history to make 4 straight scoreless starts of at least 6 innings while allowing 3 hits or fewer. He did dip in terms of his numbers late in the season, but I still think he had a very good year. I mean, his ERA increased from 2.25 to 3.06, but he was still very impressive. He's the 5th Tiger to win this award, the last being Mr. Justin Verlander. It's good company, and back in 2006. I think he's got a good thing going. You know, pitchers, you never know. In terms of a couple years, they'll be really good, and then it'll drop off. But I think he's a good young pitcher. You know, a team that narrowly missed the playoffs this year, I think he's going to be somebody that can help them be in that position every year. All right, so let's finish with the NBA, and we'll talk about a star player who's been hurt for a little while here. Dirk Nowitzki, who has a injured Achilles. He's missed his 4th straight game with the Mavericks following their last loss against the Knicks, 93-77. He did have a lengthy pregame workout in that game, but decided he should not play. He sat out the second half of the Dallas loss in Portland November 4th, and he has not played since, and the Mavericks are 2-7. Of course, Dirk, one of the franchise greats, 38 years old now, though. You can't rush somebody back. Not saying he's old, but at a heightened age for most NBA players in a league in which you get very young players coming in. I think it's smart for him to take it slow. He's quoted this thing. I think his coach, not Coach Mark Cuban, his owner, was quoted this thing. I think he's really close. He's feeling a lot better, and we just don't want to rush anything. There's no reason to rush anything with him. You know, you are early in the season still, in my opinion. So, I mean, obviously you are, but I think you're in a good spot. Let him rest. I mean, yes, you're losing games. You're 2-7, but you know, it's early. This is a good team. This is a team that's still built well. I think they are in a good spot. You know, so let Dirk get good. Dirk's definitely one of my favorite basketball players of all time. I'm a big fan of Dirk. So I hope to see him play well because I'm afraid this might be his last year. I really hope that I get to see him as much as possible. All right, so that is it for the show today. When we come back tomorrow, the three of us will be here to discuss the college football playoff rankings and what they look like at that moment, what they had looked like after today's announcement, and, of course, any and other news, anything else in the world of sports that comes apart and comes up, we will talk about it. Until then, though, thank you for listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. For Anthony and for Ben, I'm Alex. Thank you guys so much for listening. Enjoy your day of sports, and we will see you tomorrow.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.